Welcome back to Resolutionary Leaders. I'm Helena Gatto, your host, and today we have Susie DeVille joining us. Welcome, Susie.
Hello, I'm delighted to be here.
So Susie is a recovering overachiever and has a fabulous business now that is about innovation and creativity, and she's written a book about it. She has just come back from a retreat where she has been doing art for 10 days. And don't panic. I know a lot of you do not identify as creative or artistic. I personally do not identify. The idea of having to do art for 8 days makes me, it sends a shiver down my spine. But I think that Susie's going to be able to help us really look at how do we get our energy back and our well-being back after potentially, over thrive. I don't say thriving because we're not thriving, overachieving and just thinking that we will sleep when we die. So let's dive right into it. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got from where you said you were all burnt out and where you are now.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very entrepreneurial household, which gave me the clue right away. That's really what I wanted to do. But I took a rather circuitous path to get there. So I started in publishing, got into nonprofit leadership, then went into the real estate world, started a business during the Great Recession, much to the howls and cries of everyone in my community telling me I was crazy. And then when the markets crashed, which right before the Great Recession, everything just stopped in the world of real estate and construction. And that was my family's mode of taking care of ourselves, those two industries. And so what happened was a total implosion of everything, which was my health, my marriage, my finances, everything just went poof. And my first reaction was to do what I always used to do, which was to just double down, try to work more, try to muscle through it, try to white knuckle it. And I quickly realized that wasn't going to be the path because I was just further and further removing myself from any potential problem solving. So I had an opportunity to basically start over. And it's not something that time period, which was a 5-year period, is not my favorite thing, but I wouldn't trade it for the world because I did have this way of moving and living in the world that is very much like everyone who has been on the receiving end of cultural messaging their entire lives, which is we have to excel at all costs. We have to be first. We're not going to collaborate. We're going to compete. We're going to find more ways to be productive. We're going to work hard. And in order to achieve anything, we have to have lots of discipline. And that just puts us on the slippery slope to burnout, overwhelm, over-controlling, perfectionism, which is a complete destroyer of our mental and physical and spiritual well-being. So I found my way out, and it had to do with something that if you had told me 20 years ago that I would now be the founder and CEO of the Innovation and Creativity Institute and I would be doing art to help entrepreneurs and leaders, I would have laughed you out of the room.
Yeah, it would be that. I feel like I'm you before you've done all of this. So that I'm very fascinated to hear how this is working.
It's important to understand first, not only do we have this cultural landscape, we also have this wonderful brain that is wired for scarcity and survival. Mm-hmm. And that's great, but it's not so great for us in the modern world. So that sort of double combination of lack, survival, scarcity, fear puts us in this sort of gerbil wheel of there's never enough.
Yeah.
And I'm not enough. So if we have a whopping case of imposter syndrome, then we're effectively cut off from the richness of our intuition, our imagination, and our problem solving skills. So, what I discovered was that if I were to come at my life in a completely different way, which was to change my energy, totally inspire myself first, and not in the way that we think about inspiration as the light bulb over the head, but rather literally breathing in beauty, art, nature, being with those we love, doing what brings us alive. Then we can top off our tanks of willingness and energy, which then helps us with the next phase, which is now changing how we actually move through the day. And I created a series of 5 practices and put them into a formula to make it easy for us to take either 1 or 2 or all 5 of these to start to change the beginning of our day.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of 1-2 combination helps us sustain change, because we're great for the first week. Like January is everybody rushes back to the gym and then is gone by the end of January. This is the way to change your life in a way that feels completely in alignment with who we truly are. And it's sustainable.
Okay. Hit me with it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The first one is from Julia Cameron, the author of the book, The Artist Way. And it's morning pages. So this series of 5 things I call the 5 M's.
Mm-hmm.
So morning pages, for those of you who don't know her work, it is a journaling approach. Now, if you're about to throw the laptop or your earbuds across the room, don't panic, because journaling doesn't have to mean you're sitting down with this lofty tome and you're going to write these fabulous words of prose that make people weak in the knees. It's literally 3 pages of just dumping your brain out onto the page.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a lot of clients who can't do 3 pages. I have clients who won't do it in a book. We have created workarounds even for that. 1 page and just 5 minutes is really more than enough, actually, to start to settle down your central nervous system, to clear out the clutter that's in your mind. And it gives us a chance to do what I call the best way to create a to-do list. Because when we sit down with a piece of paper in the morning and we're going to do our to-do list, we have all of this anxiety. We're trying to the list is like 50 things long. And our brain, which is wonderful again, but it continues to work on all 50 of those things. So if we're working on one thing, the brain is working in the background. It doesn't like open loops. So if you have a morning pages practice or a morning page practice, you can have your piece of paper and then whatever you use for your to-do list. And you can just get all the garbage out of your mind, just write like the wind. It doesn't have to be punctuated, doesn't have to make sense. And as your brain is thinking of, oh, I need to do that, I need to remember that, then you can jot those things down. So you have 2 ways to clear your mind right out of the gate. Then you can look at your list and pick one. And then you have to renegotiate with your subconscious mind that you're not going to forget the other things on the list, but we're going to go all in on this one. Mm-hmm. That helps the brain settle down, and it brings all of your focus and all of your attention. And it helps to keep us from this desire to multitask, because with those very long lists, we're just so sure there's never going to be enough time, which of course harkens back to I'm not enough and there's not enough. So morning pages, easy way to get started.
And so when you pull out that one thing you're going to focus on, are you doing that while you're doing your 3 pages, or you do your 3 pages and then?
Yes,
that
I
piece.
do. So the way that I do, I have a spiral notebook that I use for morning pages. And sometimes I'll write one page, sometimes I'll write 10. It just depends on
Yeah.
what's going on. But then I'll keep note cards next to me, little 3x5 cards. And then as I'm doing my journaling, I will write down what comes to mind. That I close the morning pages journal up, and I have other things that I do in the morning. But when I'm sitting down to work, I will pick one from that list, and then I will focus all in on that.
So it also makes me think about how when you're writing, your emotions come up. And I think that a lot of the time we resist our emotions. We feel angry about something, we feel annoyed about something. These emotions come up and we resist them back into our bodies. And with the morning pages, you're allowing the emotions to come up and process in a really safe way, in a constructive way.
1000%. And what's true about all of these practices is that very same thing, because we don't want to feel what we don't want to feel because we have a perception that it's going to be horrible and painful and it's going to last forever. When in fact, if you were to bump up against something in your morning pages and you're sitting there going, oh God, it just makes me, I feel car sick or whatever, you can actually put your journal aside and just call all of it down. Just let it all land. Let all of the things in your mind land. And what happens is it takes about 90 seconds or so for that to burn through you and lift.
Yeah.
And so our desire to work go is not only culture brain, but it's also this just great deep desire to avoid
Yeah.
painful thoughts.
Yeah. It's making me think of this. I just recently heard about a way to overcome the fight or flight response in your body. And it was to visualize actually doing. So when you feel really angry, actually visualize doing what it is that you'd like to do. Like bash that person's head in, throw them up against the wall, but actually allow your body to, rather than resist the emotion,
Yes.
feel it. And then by doing that and not actually doing it, but just doing it in your mind, it allows you to just move through it.
I can support that 100%. The brain really doesn't really discern what we're imagining versus what we're doing. So there would be a release in the mind to go through that exercise and then come home to yourself and finish your morning pages. And it just feels you have renegotiated with your sense of time after you do these practices.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before, I always felt the sort of collapsing in of time. And what I experience when I do these practices is that time becomes like an expanding accordion. And it's almost uncanny how it happens. You just feel like I have all the time in the world, and we don't have this pressure. And then that sort of sends the brain into another loop of scarcity. Whereas you just are in your zone, you're in a flow state, and now you're able to surf these waters of ease because you're swimming in the current of who you truly are.
Mm. I wanted to stop and do some morning pages right now.
But wait, there's more.
Okay, go. Number two.
So the second one is movement. And obviously, I didn't invent that, but this is such a fascinating topic for me because most of us are programmed to move for fitness, which is, of course, wonderful. We absolutely need it. But now I'm a big proponent of engaging in moving, especially a walk, with this little pocket journal and a pencil. And you get the benefit of, especially if you go early in the morning, you get all the benefit of the early morning sun. You're moving your body, the brain is engaged. I have the best ideas when I'm walking. And then I also I play this game where I'm just noticing, paying attention, very intentionally paying attention,
Hmm.
because I used to race through the world like a horse with blinders on, and my head was down and I was just checking my appointments, like what's next? What's next? I missed the world. So that time, even if you're doing a 10-minute walk or 10 minutes on a bicycle or 10 minutes in the pool, whatever it is for you, you can find an enormous amount of benefit because we're putting ourselves into the state where the brain's default mode network can come online. And that's what happens when we're in the shower or we're driving. And all of this rich, fertile soil from the soul, and it's also the birthplace of some of our best creative thinking, that now gets to come to the surface, and all kinds of cool things happen in terms of centers of the brain lighting up, and it feels amazing, and it's a delicious way to tap into your best thinking.
I get it when I blow dry my hair. I have the
Mhm.
best ideas when I'm blow drying my hair. I don't know what that is. But also, it made me think of something I heard from Mel Robbins' podcast, where she was talking about looking for hearts, and something that she does with her daughters is when they're walking, always looking for something that's shaped like a heart in the world.
Mhm.
And the moment she said this, I was like, oh, and I was on a walk and I looked, and there were like 12 heart stickers on this window of this car beside me. And that car's parked there all the time. I'd never noticed that. I notice that all the time now. And then few more steps down the road, there was like the concrete was shaped like a heart. And I find that's a really fun way of just bringing my attention back to the world, looking for hearts.
And it's also a wonderful way to connect with the magic of the universe. And I know that's going to sound crazy woo, but it really is fascinating when we set out to find something in the natural world. I could remember trying to see if I could pull a little fast one on the universe. I was like, okay, I'd like to see an orange butterfly. And I was out on this very long hike. I had gone way down a Forest Service road. And on the way back, there was an orange butterfly. And I just was, first I was in shock, but then I was just like, of course. Because and we can feel in our body when we're in that zone. When you see those heart stickers, the chemicals in your body, the electrical signals in your body are different, and you enter into a different state. And what's fun is that we can actually call upon that even if we're in a busy city or we're in a conference room and there's a contentious meeting going on. We can find those little pockets anytime we want.
Yeah. Another thing I heard to get out of the fight or flight response is looking all around,
Mm.
like really scanning the whole environment. And obviously that makes sense because when you're in that zone, you're so hyper focused because that's what your brain does. It gets you because you're about to go and you've got to survive and kill something or run or whatever it is you're doing.
Right.
And I think what you were saying about having my head down and I was just ticking off my list. And I think so many of us are in that state. So walking and really being aware of your environment again is resetting the way your brain is working.
Yes, completely, 100%. And there's this really interesting phenomenon when as I call it, we open the aperture of us, just like you would
Mhm.
open an aperture in a camera lens. We're receiving so many different context clues.
Yeah.
So it's the environment, but it's also the environment plus our mind. And when there is this really beautiful waltz going on, it sets us free in ways that seem almost hard to believe, but it's a phenomenon that's real, and it's one that we can repeat really anytime we want.
One of the hurdles that people in the workplace in conflict is not addressing issues as they happen. And I think it's so easy to just ignore that inkling. You're going, oh, that's not a, but whenever I stop and go, no, I need to address that, it feels like a little thing. And then I'll go and address it. And it was a big thing. It could have become a big thing, but
Yeah.
it wasn't. But I think it's very easy when you're not in that very grounded, aperture open space to just blow by those moments. And that's what kicks you in the butt down the road.
This is where energy comes in. Energy to me, I have just been in an energy research rabbit hole for several months now. And here's what I know. We solve for time and managing time all the time, but we don't ever think about our energy, really. And what I think is so fun and amazing about the 5Ms is that it brings our energy back up, and that helps us become the pack leader of our authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And from that energetic stance, we tend to go, huh? What was it you said? And you stop and ask for clarifying information.
Mm-hmm.
And you can nip things in the bud. You can, as you just said, you can prevent things from spiraling into a disastrous emotional situation or whatever. But it helps us to take these little steps, even if we're just beginning with inquiry and asking for clarification, because we're building new neural networks when we do that, and we're pruning old ones that don't serve us. And it can start to become a habit that feels natural for us. And that ignites this new ability to set and keep boundaries.
Mm.
When we have that going on, then we have this ability to call upon our courage in all kinds of new ways. And every time we set and hold a boundary with love, we're calling more energy back to ourselves. So it's this great snowball effect. But the opposite is true when we have no boundaries or very porous boundaries, and we let this little thing happen and what's no big deal, and that thing happen, or here comes the big thing, and we're still not asking for clarification, we're still not addressing an issue, then energy is literally just draining right out of us.
Mm. Okay, so we've got morning pages and movement. What's our third M?
Yes. So the next one is meditation.
Uh-huh.
Everyone has an idea that meditation has to be hard or long or some sort of fancy process. If you can sit still in a quiet room in the dark, alone for 5 minutes and not race out of your chair or grab your phone, that's more than enough. Because you will start to understand and feel what is you and what is not you. And this helps us become a much better observer of our thoughts so that we're not associating the odd thoughts that we have with who we are. There's odd thoughts that we're having, and then there's us. So the meditation not only resets us energetically and calms us and settles us down, but it also takes us to this place where we're more willing to stand up for our authentic selves because we're more clear on what and who that is.
Okay, fourth one.
Fourth one is moments of inspired learning. And that is just 1 minute, open a book, find an inspirational quote, or read a poem, or listen to a poem. I have this practice that I started this year. I have a 5-year journal, and the entry spaces are just these tiny little 1-inch rectangles. So it's very simple to do this. I will just find a quote about something that I'm researching or I'm interested in, and I'll write it in the book. And what has happened, because now I'm almost at the end of year 1, I am leafing through this book and I'm starting to make interesting connections among what originally looked like disparate chunks of information. So I'm connecting these dots forward and backward. And that is not only incredibly satisfying intellectually, but what's happening is, if we remember how the brain is always going in the background, the brain is seeing these quotes. And now when I sit down to write a blog post or a web page or a letter or whatever it is, I have a new sort of fertile garden to go to and pluck things from. So moments of inspired learning can be just very simple. And if you don't want to start with writing things down, just listen to a poem or read something out of a book that puts you into this sort of campfire of other creators.
And also what it does is it puts you in that state of looking for that inspiration. I was hearing this is what Taylor Swift does every day, anything like a little phrase or something, and she just writes it down. And then when she sits down to write a song, she's got all of this and connects it in different ways. But it's looking for those pieces as you go along. And how many times do you think, oh, I'll remember that? And then you never remember it. And now we have a voice to text and all that sort of stuff. You can just do a little voice memo to yourself.
I highly recommend carrying a little notebook and a pencil or a pen, because and I will type things into my phone too, but there's something about when we're writing something down, because we're engaging the body, we're engaging the brain in a different way.
Yeah.
And we tend to cement things into our brains better when we're writing than if we're typing.
Yeah.
But Taylor's such an inspiration for that very reason, because she is collecting constantly. She is also very much reaffirming every single day, multiple times a day, what her soul loves and what her heart wants to express. So she's doing the same thing. You're searching for hearts on the path. Yeah. She's searching for something that ignites her soul or says something in a way that expresses her heart in a unique way. So she is wiring her brain, and she's also wiring this magical experience in the world for more of those things to show up. And when you get on that, it's another one of those flywheel kind of examples. When you get on that and it starts turning and turning, ideas are coming all the time. And you become wonderful at spotting them, great at recording them. And then you take all of these ingredients into your kitchen and you create whatever you want out of this cauldron of creativity for whatever application that you want.
Love it. Okay. What's the final one?
The final one, this is the one that all my hard-charging entrepreneurs and visionary leaders fight me on, and that's making something.
Yeah.
Don't freak out. Don't freak out. I want you to know that literally if you want to get something fun, these are little crayons made in Switzerland and a journal like this.
Yeah.
And you can doodle, you can sketch something, you can create a collage. Now here's a really easy collage that takes Taylor Swift's method and your heart method and puts them together. So if you get an envelope and you go out into the world and you spot something that catches your eye, what stops you in your tracks? Maybe it's you want to take a picture of something. Maybe you see an inspirational quote. Maybe you see a word in a magazine. Maybe there's a color swatch that you just, I don't know what it is about that color, but I'm going to get a swatch of it. You start collecting these things and put them in your envelope. And then after about a week of collecting, you open your journal or your notebook of whatever it is. It doesn't have to be fancy or perfect. Just grab something, take one to three things out of your envelope and arrange it onto a page. You can use tape, you can use a glue stick. And then when you look at it, and it doesn't have to be this abstract art, fabulous thing. What's so powerful about it is that it's your soul that's represented on that page in front of you, right?
I'm laughing because my page would just have a bowl of pasta and a glass of wine.
And you know what? You may say, I need to book a trip to Italy because what happens is at the end of you make your collage and you write down, what is it about these things that lights me up? And then you put it away. You're done. That's 5 minutes. You're done. We don't have to launch into watercolor. You may. You don't have to do abstract painting. You might. You can play around with very simple tools and just the only thing you got to do is move your hands. You can go to the kitchen and make a sauce for that pasta. And that time in this zone. So what happens is you cross over this threshold, this place of no language, and you're not really here. You're not there either. You're just in no place and in no time. And you're not worrying about the outcome. You're not worrying if it's going to be beautiful or fabulous or tasty, whatever. You're just in it. What happens at the end of that, and sometimes in the middle of it, here come the ideas, because what you have done is send this taproot down into your soul, into your intuition, into your best thinking. And I can tell you a quick story. Last fall, a year ago, I was teaching a class. I was doing an abstract painting, and we were doing a series of 2. We were going back and forth, working very fast. And we weren't thinking at all about design or color choices or do I like it or all because we were just doing one, doing the other one, doing one, doing the other one. At the end of about 45 minutes of that, I was walking to the sink with my brushes, and here comes book number 2. Like a freight train. I hadn't even been thinking about book number 2 consciously, but I started getting chapter heads. I started getting content, and it was coming, and it kept coming and coming. And I was like, that is fascinating. And what happens with us is that we have such little time when we're just with us, without any buffer, without any distraction. And this, again, 5 minutes of moving these puts us into a whole new state that ignites our courage to take bold action. And then when we take bold action, we ignite serendipity and synchronicity, and all kinds of cool things start happening. And I know it sounds like magical thinking.
No, it doesn't. I have a pretty good sense of what you're saying. Sounds fabulous. And it is something that those practices, to me, that's like that next level of just going.
But it's not. That is the biggest, that is such a trap of the brain.
Right.
Because it's now, it's right now. If I gave you, here's something fun that people can do. Google the word neurographics.
Okay.
And what you will see is that you're starting with a little 3x5 rectangle piece of paper, and you're just drawing wavy lines all over it. Then you're going back and you're filling in where the intersecting lines occur. And then you take colored pencils or crayons or whatever, and you color in the bubbles. That's it. That is enough. And I have if I don't have time, or if I am not able to paint or whatever, I will do a quick neurographics exercise, and you will enter that zone. And it is something that you can literally, and you don't even have to have a crayon or a colored pencil. I've done them with just a pencil. One pencil and a Post-it is great. So it's not this thing that we do. I'll go to the gym when I get the right cute outfit or the perfect pair of sneakers or whatever. We keep pushing it away from ourselves because we're afraid we're not going to be good at it.
I think a lot of us think, for me, art is watercolors and drawing. And that's just something I've never been able to, how I see it in my head is never comes out of my pen the way that I want it to, or my pencil. So
If
it's something that I'm like, I can't do that.
we could release our desire to be great realistic artists,
Right.
because that was the reason why at the age of maybe 6 or 7, when we were asked to draw a horse in class and mine looked like a coffee table,
Yeah.
that I was like, oh, I'm a straight A student and I can't do this. I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't keep that art stuff. I'm going to do something else. And that is where a lot of us begin this sort of thinking that if I can't depict something that looks good, that's in the real world, then I'm not an artist. And that was the definition I used to have.
Mm.
It doesn't have to look like anything. It literally has nothing to do with the outcome. You could actually love what you make, find it interesting, but it's about the time moving your hands and in this world of not being there or here where the magic is. And then eventually you might pick up something and you might find, oh, I want to pursue watercolor or whatever, learn more about it or play around with it. But you don't have to start there by any stretch.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful for me. I'm going to be implementing the 5 M's. And your book is called Buoyant. Is that correct?
Yes, it's called Buoyant, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Becoming Wildly Successful, Creative, and Free.
I will be buying that as well. Thank you so much, Susie DeVille. It's been wonderful speaking with you today.
Thank you so much for having me.